Hi, Design Pros. Welcome to the Lunch and Learn Business Growth Series. I'm Elsa Johnson, your host and founder of Elsa Johnson Coaching, where I guide my clients to lead with intention and thrive by design. This series is designed for you, interior designers and window coverings business owners who are ready to level up, attract more clients, and grow with confidence. Each month, I bring in industry experts to share game-changing strategies that you can apply right away. No fluff, no sales pitches, just real value to help you thrive. So grab your notes, get inspired, and don't forget, subscribe to the channel for more expert insights and updates. You'll find all the event details and contact information for myself and the industry experts in the notes below. Ready to grow? Let's dive in. Well, welcome everybody back to another great presentation today. I'm really looking forward to this. I must admit, I have just recently met David, but I have heard a lot of great things about him, and I'm really excited for what he's going to present for you today. As you all know, I'm Elsa Johnson. I am the founder and CEO of Elsa Johnson Coaching and Consulting, and I help my clients lead with intention and thrive by design. So no, enough about me. On to you, Dave. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Give us me and everybody here a chance to get to know you a little bit.
Okay, well, thanks so much for the opportunity and getting to know the industry a little bit differently. So I'm new. I'm relatively new to the industry. So I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Morris Mayer Services Group, or Plaza Park Interiors. I know Morris since we're 14, which has been a long time. And you know, the opportunities. So one of the things we'll talk about is the stress reduction, but it's also the opportunities. So by being the COO about a year, little over a year, I've learned that you can't say no to anything, right? And as a workroom, that's what we want to do is understand the challenges, and you would like to never say no, but we also know boundaries, and that there's sometimes we need to say no. So how I got here is not only because I knew Morris at 14. I had a career in corporate America, and then Morris, at the end of my career, he was like, "Hey, I'd love for you to come out help out at Plaza Park," and we've done that. If anybody doesn't know Morris Mayer, you got to. He's one of those human beings that not only in the industry, who he's been in the industry 30 close, well, I think it's 38. We started adding it up one night, and so he's pushing on the 40 years in the industry, as well as just being an overall good guy. And he knows that I've been doing the corporate America, but I also separately am a public speaker, an author. I help people coach on writing, as well as stress reduction, and how that all plays in. You're like, all right, he doesn't fit. But the stress reduction, as we'll talk about a little bit, is we know when either both in the workroom as well as when our clients are doing installation, yeah, there's a lot of stress. There's a lot of moving parts. And when there's moving parts, there's a lot of stress. And how do we handle it? And I've learned a couple of techniques, some which everybody uses, some which are more unique to me, and it's been fun. We've I in the little over a year with Morris, I've gone on installations where the designer is having a panic attack and got them off their ledge, and as well as our staff. So running the staff, and Morris gives me a lot of leeway, and which is another trait that you always want to have when you're working with a partner, who gives you leeway to be able to do everything. I mean, his wife is happy that I'm kind of taking care of him at the office, and she'll take care of him at home. But he feels also that there's a better work-life balance. So it's not, while we're under the stresses of running workrooms, to know where the balances are. And again, those boundaries are so important. You're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, I was trying to, iron out some background noise I had here. But yeah, stress is one of those things that can creep up on you. And if you do not know how to take care of it, it can end in burnout for sure. And you being new into the industry can sometimes be a very good thing. We can get so tied up in our own routines and not really see how we could do it differently. And even from a corporate perspective, right, coming in with maybe some systems that really work in the corporate world that we in the smaller businesses may not necessarily know of. So I think it's great that Morris has tapped into you and learned that. And I'm really thankful for you to come here today and help us, maybe not talk us off the ledge, but at least give us some thoughts on how we can do it when if we ever get to that point. So without further ado, I will let you get to it.
Okay, well, so we're talking about that ledge, which does happen, right? We get stressed. There's some of those installations, or even just some jobs, just become so much, and you swear the universe is conspiring against us. The trim's wrong, the client's pacing, your phone's buzzing, multiple clients, multiple vendors, and you're grabbing your coffee cup in one hand and a staple gun in the other hand and hoping you use the right one in the right way. So it's really one of those things we've all experienced. And while I know we don't have a lot of people on here, but I'm sure that we could spend the next hour, more than an hour, speaking of all the horror stories. But what I want us to do is think about those horror stories, but know that there's other ways to manage it. A lot of times when you're not able to manage your stress is because it's just coming at you too quickly. And if we can slow down the process, but also speed up our thinking, that's where it becomes that much more powerful. The reset buttons. And one of my favorite reset buttons that I'll talk about is this touch, this havening touch, it's called. It's a because havening, I'm certified. So among my corporate background, I also, as I mentioned earlier, that I do coaching. So one of the techniques, I've learned a lot of different techniques. One of them, my go-to method is havening. And havening is a psychosensory touch modality that everybody could do for themselves. And what it is, I'll just show you quickly, and we'll talk about it a little bit, is just rubbing your hands. Now, a lot of times when I do that, and you rub it for, 8, 9 seconds, it'll start to create delta waves in our brain. And by doing that, that'll automatically relax ourselves. Because that's the same brain waves we use when we go to sleep. So yes, it can help you go to sleep. It can help you do a lot of different things. And when you learn to do that, you could do it yourself at any point, even when you're arguing with a client, a customer, a partner. You just rub your hands a little bit, and it really reduces the stress on doing it. It doesn't reduce the stress because it's gone away. It started to make the body chemistry work for you. And that's some of the things that we'll talk about today is how we can make our bodies work for us and maximize the energy appropriately, because we've all been there when 3 or 4 clients are calling, and again, what do? How do you respond to it? You can either take a deep breath. One of the things I always say is breathe. If we think about it, when we do receive a lot of stress, the challenge is we stop breathing. We unintentionally, right, and we hold it. And that's what causes some of the pressure, because our body is programmed to breathe. The more that we breathe, the easier it is, and the way we breathe. So again, if you ever think about when you're under those stresses, you're taking shallow breaths. And the shallow breath is almost like holding your breath. And that's why you sometimes just have to go, and that also is a great quick reset, because it's allowing the oxygen in your head, which will flow through your body. It's all these things that we don't recognize while it's happening, but by slowing ourselves down, that's how we can speed ourselves up. And the way we think, by not having so many things, much like our computers. If we have 50 different pages open, the computer works slower. Same thing with our bodies. Is if we're doing 15 different things, there is a myth about multitasking, that I can multitask. No, you could do lots of things at the same time. But when we really are honest with ourselves, multitasking really should be I'm doing one thing at this time with complete focus. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. In that, if we completely focus, that's how we can be more effective. We know our jobs. I'm not about to tell you. So being new to the industry, the workroom industry, I'm not about to tell Morris or anybody here how to do their job. I could say how to do it a little bit more effectively. We've done that. We've been really successful at Plaza Park. We've automated some things that Morris was like, we can't automate it. This industry is old. Nobody's going to want to do that. I go, well, let's start off with our workroom. And then as we started showing some other workrooms, I mean, Nat Morris is also now having, I think it's going to be on Fridays in the fall. He's starting this workroom, gathering where everybody could get together and, not only be on Facebook pages, but problem solve and lead and have industry leaders like what you're doing, Elsie, really teaching people who know what they do or just might see it differently. Because as Einstein said, the problem that got you into it is not the same solution. You need to find something else to do it. It's not just as easy as backing out the car that we want to do. So, I want just everybody, we only have a few people on here, but I want you to think about those moments that you could feel the stress and where does that lie within your body? We all have a place. For me, it's usually my neck. Whenever the things start getting thrown at me, I feel my neck tighten up. And I want everybody to recognize where that feels within themselves. Because when you could do that, then you can also recognize how you can move the energy. Now, I won't go too holistic, but when our body is aligned fully, we are working at our best efforts. So if we're not able to do certain things, if we're not grounded, our feet. So, one of the things that I always talk about is let's ground ourselves. And that just means when you're in the middle of a crisis, what do? We take that breath again and just be like, okay, I am right here. I am present. No matter who's yelling at you, your kids, again, all these tools are tools that are helpful in the workroom when people are telling you in the workroom, right? You have the the upholsterer doing this and the carpenter doing that, and they're all asking you conflicting different things, but you have to have the answers. It's just like, okay, you're allowed to say, take one minute. I'm listening to you, fully present, not listening to both, right? We can't listen to two people at the same time effectively. Now, are there times people overtalk each other? Sure. Guarantee that's going to happen. And I'm not going to say, okay, that's never going to happen, or it's not going to frustrate you. So that's where knowing yourself, this all goes back to knowing ourselves because sometimes when we're in the workroom, and that's what's happened here at Plaza Park, is I've been the change. Sometimes we need one person to be the change just to see things differently, have more productivity because the employees are that much happier. The clients have somebody to yell at and then know how to get them off their respective ledges, right? We don't want anybody to be on a ledge. We want to make sure that we don't even want to be close to a ledge. We want to know, okay, I got to call Dave. Dave's going to come up with a solution. And when he doesn't, he's going to say, I don't have a solution for this, but let me figure it out, right? That's what we all want during our workrooms is having that ability to have that permission by showing and knowing that we will find the answer. And sometimes the answer is not going to be a perfect answer. I'm not telling you everything gets tied up in a nice button. Sometimes the answer is still going to be there's a problem. And what do you do with those problems?
So what I'm hearing, so far I'm hearing you share with us three methods, right? The rubbing of the hands.
Yep.
And the breathing.
Yep.
And then the third thing was just knowing ourselves enough to know to recognize that that sensation in our body, which I love, because I definitely talk to my clients about that too, because we recognize that even before we go to the ledge. When we start learning that, then we can sort of nip it in the bud and get better. So I love those three things. Also, the thing that you're talking about and saying, what I'm hearing you say beyond, beneath all of this, is that it's not that we're telling everybody here that all your problems are going to go away by using these techniques. The problems are going, you still have to address them.
Sure.
But by this, you are able, like you said, to tap into your wise mind, to tap into that part of you that can more clearly make a good decision or a good selection of the next best move. That was a tongue twister for me. Am I hearing you right in that?
You are hearing me right in that knowing our resources, right? So knowing the answers. I'll start with the third one first. And with the third one, right? So you need to know what our options are and need to figure it out. And sometimes we might not know our options without reaching out to somebody else. And a resource is, who are the people you could trust with? Who are the people like Morris you can call? I have a problem. This is what's going on. Elsie, I have a problem. This is what's going on. Dave, I have a problem. This is what's going on. Now, I had a client the other day call me up and was explaining to me about window treatments and things like that. And I said, You're speaking a language I don't understand. And she's like, just take down the notes. I said, okay. I made her happy. She called back an hour later. She goes, you helped me more than you think you did. And I'm like, great. So sometimes people want to be heard, and remember that, and recognize it. So that third part is not only knowing our resources, but also have that self-awareness in knowing how we can receive and what people need to show up fully for our employees and for those we work around. Sometimes, one of my biggest errors is, wanting to solve problems versus, sometimes you just need to just listen to me and it'll all be fine.
Yeah, it's nice when somebody tells us exactly what to do, right? It would be nice on occasion, but I think what you are speaking into, it's more empowering for somebody standing in that very stressful situation and saying, okay, let me take a breather, let me refocus. Where am I really feeling this? Can I handle this myself now that I have a more clear-headed mind, or do I need to look into those resources that you were talking about? Who do I need to call? And also, you also touched a little bit on something that um, we talked about before we got started. This is that create that network, whether it's, is it a vendor, is it somebody that represents the vendor, is it another workroom that you have created a good collaboration with. But trusting your installer, we were talking about both installation and the workroom, right? Trusting each other enough to say, you're the expert here.
Yeah, that's really a big part, and being solopreneurs and solo employees, sometimes it's hard, right? Or when there's not a huge staff, because everybody's it's on you, and knowing how to carry that differently. So that's one of the things that I have done successfully with Morris, that he doesn't have to carry it himself, and knowing that we'll find the answer together, knowing how we move those inches. So, an example of that was, I was left in the morning to get the truck out the door, get it all taken care of. And just then the client was like, the contractors are still all over the house. You can't come for the delivery. We had hired people. What do you do? So the first thing I did is, hey, I'm taking a deep breath. I didn't tell anybody that. I was just like, okay, what do we do? Okay. And much like we would do in our regular lives, give me more information. When your kids come to you, hey, mom, dad, I wanted this, I want that, give me more information, is a trick that we probably have all learned, instead of just saying, hey, dad, can I have the car keys? And you're like, all right, wherever you're going. So it really all is about asking the right questions, slowing our brains down, and not be in panic mode. Like, oh my God, what are you going to do? Well, if it's a client's fault, in that way, sometimes you have to have that tough conversation. all right, we'll do it another day, but this is going to cost you XYZ. Or how can we work together to make that happen? So, a lot of the problem solving part of it, and that's why I love my rub the hands piece, is because you could do that and nobody really recognizes it. It doesn't have to be, I'm raising it higher so I get the screen, but it doesn't have to be that way. And a lot of times when I teach it, a lot of people will say, I already do that. I'm like, yeah, because it feels good. It's a biological thing, but we don't recognize and understand why until we're trained properly in it. And once we're able to do that, that's where the magic happens. It's like everything else. You get better at it the more that you do it. You take care of yourselves. And that's why knowing those resources or watching the way that you breathe. So when we go back to the breathing, which is really huge, there's a lot of different techniques. One technique, the famous box breathing, that the Navy SEALs, we've all heard about those amazing human beings, Navy SEALs, but how do they stay calm under fire, right? A Navy SEAL isn't just somebody who's right there. They're in the middle of it. They're in the worst situations and they have to remain calm. So how do they do that? Well, they do the box method. And the box method is easily explained: 4 breaths in, 4 breaths out, 4 breaths in, and 4 breaths out. And if we want to try that now, we don't have that many people, but we could try that and, just take 4 breaths in. Let's start now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let it go. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then take another breath in. 1, 2. So you do that for a couple of times, a couple of sessions, it'll calm you down. It's regulating. There's other ways to regulate your breathing also. Another is, one of the techniques that I've been taught is, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which does not make anybody blow up or launch. It means, you start off by thinking of 5 things that make you happy, 4 things that you smell, 3 things you see, 2 things that you could touch that would make you feel good. And then 1 is the final breath. So there's a lot of different ways to do that technique, but those are some of the things that do it. It's paying attention to that moment. While everybody's screaming at you, you don't have to always respond in that. When people are in your face, respond. And that's the permission we give ourselves. And able to do that.
I love especially that last part of saying we have to learn to give that permission to ourselves. No, nobody even though everything is coming at us, it is both our right and our responsibility to say, hey, hang on a moment, let me breathe. And sometimes that in itself can just break down the tension. Just let me breathe. Let me take this in for a minute, and then do the box breathing or doing the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which I love. That's a great one. So I think to sort of wrap up today, I think one of the things that I'm hearing in what you're saying is about, I was saying before that lead with intention, right? That there has to be an intentionality behind these things that we do, and being intentional with our breath, being intentional with our attention, being intentional with what do you think is for me, it's also what do you actually want to achieve here, right? Being intentional about focusing on what is the next best move. Because sometimes, even if you, like you said before, sometimes we don't know the solution, but there's always something, that one action that we can take. What do you have for us here that sort of helps us taking that action so we feel we're actually getting somewhere and not just standing still in the middle of the spot and keep breathing? But maybe that is what's required. I don't know. You tell me.
Well, I think the beginning is really just the word you, like you said. So once we can regulate ourselves, we can start seeing things differently. And I use this in a sports analogy, and not everybody's going to get it. when there's a quarterback in football, the guy who throws the ball, when they're a rookie, they say the game's working way too fast. Probably much like when we first started doing our jobs, we started getting in the industry, any industry. The game was too fast. And now you're all seasoned veterans. The game is working much slower. And the same thing happens because it's practice, knowing how to manage those stresses and knowing what works for you. Now, those are just three methods that work, or you figure out why you're doing it. There's a lot of work that can get done by doing that, by figuring it out. So it's recognizing how is it affecting you, and once you could do that, you can then figure out what the right resources and which is the right path to go down to.
Fantastic. I really appreciate it. So I think we want to wrap it up here. Any last pearls of wisdom for us before we sign off and start our Q&A, but we'll leave the recording for here.
Yeah, so I just think, one, if you'd like to contact me, I do have kind of like a worksheet that everybody could have. It's like, I call it the Calm Workroom Kit, so that I could send out if they want. Reach out to me at Dave, Dave, at plazaparkinteriors.com, and tell them you heard from Elsie, and then I'll be more than happy to send them the worksheet. And it's just little tools and checklists and larger conversations that I'm willing to have. And one of the things that Morris and I would like to do is help workrooms. We know that the stresses aren't going to go away, and because the stresses aren't going to go away, let's figure out how to do this together, how to get through it together.
Fantastic. I really appreciate it. And that resource, or that Dave's contact information, will also be sent out with this video, and it will also be in the notes on the YouTube link for this. So you can always contact Dave through that. I really appreciate your time, Dave here today. And again, I'm Elsa Johnson, and we'll see you next month, where we have the pleasure of having Morris himself here too. So that will be exciting. He brings many years of experience into this industry. So thanks for coming today, Dave, and I really appreciate it. And I know people who will be listening to this later will do as well, especially with the holiday season being right around the corner. So thank you for that. And until next month, I'm Elsa Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.